Now, much like my boy Thanos, I'm all about maintaining balance in the universe, so after laying into Midsummer for being probably my worst movie of the year, until a certain other film comes out, I think it's high time for a bit of positivity and optimism. That means another episode of The Drinker Recommends. And in this case, the drinker recommends you watch Cobra Kai. Remember the Karate Kid movie from the 1980s? Remember the asshole bad guy Johnny who made Daniel's life a misery and ended up getting his ass kicked in the finale? Actually, it was his face. Ever wondered what became of that character after the events of the movie? Nah, me neither. But YouTube Red certainly did. In fact, they commissioned an entire series based around the concept, featuring most of the original actors reprising their roles from like 3 decades earlier, and that show was to be called Cobra Kai. The show premiered to rave reviews last year, returned for a second season in 2019, and by all accounts it's been renewed for a third one in 2020. Cobra Kai is one of those shows that kinda came out of nowhere and took the fucking world by storm. But why? What the hell is it? And why is it so popular? Well, pour yourself a shot, kick back and relax, because The Drinker's about to guide you through one of the best new TV shows of the past several years. Cobra Kai picks up in the present day with a middle-aged Johnny Lawrence, the antagonist of the first movie. It's been 3 decades since his humiliating defeat at the hands of Daniel LaRusso, and his life's kinda gone down the crapper. He's down on his luck, divorced, borderline alcoholic, and within minutes of us meeting him, he's unemployed. Daniel, meanwhile, has gone from strength to strength, parlaying his minor celebrity status into a successful car dealership. He's got a big house, 2 kids, and a beautiful wife who loves him. In short, he's got everything Johnny always wanted for himself. After drinking and feeling sorry for himself one night, Johnny runs into local kid Miguel, who's getting shit from a bunch of young punks. So Johnny kicks their asses with his karate skills and sends them on their way. It's a short confrontation, but it's enough for Miguel to see him as a total hero, and he begs Johnny to train him so he can defend himself in future. Johnny's reluctant at first, but a chance meeting with Daniel brings his old rivalry to the surface, and eventually he decides to reopen his old karate dojo, Cobra Kai. He bases it on the training mantra that was once drilled into him as a teenager: strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Despite the fact that he's making up most of this shit as he goes along, it somehow turns out to be exactly what the kids of today are looking for, and soon Cobra Kai begins to attract other misfits and losers, victims looking to defend themselves, drifters in need of guidance and discipline, or just lost and disenchanted kids looking for a place to belong. Being a mentor gives Johnny a new sense of purpose, and he slowly starts to grow into the role. He even begins to pull his own life together for the first time in years. But of course, all of this soon comes to the attention of Daniel, who knows all too well how dangerous Cobra Kai can be, so he decides to start his own rival dojo, based on a more peaceful and compassionate form of karate. The 2 rival senseis and their students eventually end up in a collision course that'll be settled, where else, but the All Valley Karate Championship. If this all sounds like a cliched load of nostalgic bullshit, then prepare to have your expectations subverted, and not in a Ryan Johnson kinda way, because despite the goofy premise, Cobra Kai manages to get virtually everything about itself right. It does this for many different reasons, but for the sake of brevity, and because I'm obsessed with lists, I'm gonna give you the 5 main ones right here. Number 1, the characters. Johnny and Daniel are the clear focus of this series, and it's interesting to see how they've changed and developed over the years. They were well-defined archetypes back in the original movie. One was the pushy and arrogant bully who throws his weight around, the other was the scrappy underdog who ultimately prevails. But now their roles have been kinda reversed. Now it's Johnny who's the downtrodden loser that you empathise with. He's the stereotypical jock who crashed and burned after high school and never really lived up to his early potential. Daniel, with all his wealth and success, now starts off in the superior position, and the show even flirts with the idea that he's not as good a man as you might think. He's not exactly a bad guy, but he's kinda complacent and full of himself now, and when Johnny reopens Cobra Kai, he shows a more ruthless and spiteful side, even being willing to damage local businesses to try to shut down his rival. Both characters are very much older men now, and neither one is dealing with it particularly well. Johnny still cruises around in a battered 1980s sports car, trying to impress women half his age, and acting like he's still the high school stud that he once was. Daniel, meanwhile, is dealing with the void left by the death of his mentor, Mr. Miyagi, the fact his kids are growing up fast, and the realization that despite all his money, there's something fundamentally missing in his life. The supporting characters are equally good. Miguel has a hero worship thing going on towards Johnny. He's eager to please and obeys instructions without hesitation, but gradually he develops more self-confidence and starts to question his mentor's judgment. At times, it even seems like Johnny needs Miguel as much as Miguel needs him. Aisha is a timid, overweight girl that gets shit from her bitchy classmates, and initially Johnny doesn't want to train her because she's a girl, but finally he gives in and she becomes one of his best students. But my favourite has to be Hawk. This guy is a fucking legend, and I love how he transforms from a shy, geeky wimp into a brash, super confident asshole. He goes from being a victim of bullying to kind of a bully himself. And I guess that's not too far from reality when you think about it. Shit man, even John Kreese comes back and gets a few sympathetic moments. The point here is that all of the characters in Cobra Kai feel fleshed out and complex in a way that very few shows manage to do nowadays. Nobody is 100% good or bad, they're all varying shades of grey. Everyone has reasons for being who they are and what they are, and how you perceive them very much comes down to your own personal perspective. Number 2, the performances. I mentioned before that a lot of the cast from the original movie returned for Cobra Kai, which is no mean feat considering the movie came out more than 30 years ago. Most of the heavy lifting in the early episodes is done by William Zabka as Johnny. I honestly can't remember seeing this guy in anything beyond the 1980s, which I guess plays well into his character, but holy shit, he really nails it here, delivering a quiet, reserved and honest performance that's at times angry, resentful, self-pitying and grimly resigned to his failures. He's a man broken down by a wasted life, the kind of middle-aged guy who's given up on his dreams, but every so often you get little flashes of his former confidence, or a glimmer of approval when he sees something that reminds him of his youth, and when he finally has something to strive and fight for again, it feels genuinely rewarding and satisfying to watch him come alive. Ralph Macchio might have had a bit more of a career in his time, but he's still been largely absent from the big screen since his 1980s heyday, and he still looks about 20 years younger than he actually is. He slides so easily back into the familiar role he's played 3 times already that it honestly seems like he's never been away from it. He might be older now, but he's still got the same cockiness, the same way of talking, even the same mannerisms as before, and you can tell how happy he is to be back playing his most iconic role again. Number 3, the writing. The 2 dojos in this show and their respective owners represent 2 very different philosophies on life. And in some ways, I guess they kind of represent the conflicting forces of present-day American culture. Johnny and Cobra Kai personify the bombastic self-confidence of the 80s, discipline, aggression, drive and strength, a hint of resentment towards the modern world, and a longing for the glory days of the past. On the other hand, Daniel and Miyagi-Do reflect the more compassionate and liberal climate of the present day, emphasising balance, harmony, and only fighting where necessary. But what I love about the writing of this show is that neither side is portrayed as more righteous and correct than the other. They're simply different perspectives, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. One teaches disaffected and downtrodden kids some much needed self-respect, resilience, and the courage to stand up for themselves, even though some of them take it too far and start to abuse their newfound power. The other emphasises inner peace, balance, and wisdom at the risk of being too passive and ineffectual. A different show would have had Cobra Kai as the undisputed villains, portraying them as hopelessly infected with toxic masculinity and needing to be taught a lesson by the virtuous Miyagi-Do. But the writers were smart enough to go a different route here, and instead of condemning one way of life while upholding the other, they dare to suggest that maybe neither extreme is perfect, and perhaps a bit of compromise is the way forward. Number 4, the comedy. Cobra Kai is a difficult beast to classify because it's neither a straight up drama nor a full on comedy, but it does contain strong elements of both, so I guess that makes it a comedy drama then. Anyway, I can't review it without acknowledging the amazing sense of humour that it brings. It's one of the few shows in recent memory that genuinely had me crying with laughter, like the scene where Johnny narrates the events of Karate Kid from his own point of view.
I told him to get lost, mind your own business. Out of nowhere, the guy sucker punches. What an asshole.
Or the moment when he discovers YouTube for the first time, about 15 years after the rest of the world. A lot of the humour focuses on the culture clash between Johnny, who seems to be stuck in some kind of 1980s time warp, and the sensitive, PC, desperate not to offend society we live in today. The guy simply doesn't have a fuck to give, and some of his lines are absolute gold.
Nice shirt.
Thanks.
I'm joking, it sucks.
Why not?
Same reason there aren't women in the army. Doesn't make sense.
I have asthma, so... Not anymore. See losers, I see nerds. See a fat kid with a funny hat with his tits popping out. And then send it to the internet!
It's a show that's not afraid to poke fun at political correctness or the cotton wool culture that's given birth to a generation of frightened, directionless snowflakes, and it dares to suggest that maybe a bit of old school bravado, discipline, and adversity is what today's kids are really looking for. Number 5. Nostalgia done right. Being based around a 1980s movie, you'd expect the nostalgia to be strong with this one, and it is. There's a ton of callbacks and references to the Karate Kid. Some of them are subtle.
Shoot.
Oh no.
Some of them are subversive.
Hey, Sensei, is there any particular way you want me to wash these windows?
No, I don't get it.
And others are surprisingly poignant and unexpected.
Us Cobra Kai never dies.
But the important thing is that they're never allowed to overshadow current events. The show never uses them as a crutch to support a weak storyline or as the butt of some lame joke. Cobra Kai treats its source material and its characters with the respect and reverence they're due, but it's not afraid to move forward and take them in new and interesting directions. And in my drunken opinion, this is one of the best examples of nostalgia done right that I can think of. If I had to level any kind of criticism towards the show, I'd say the second season leans a little too heavily on the younger characters, with all their typical love triangles and teen angsty bullshit. Sometimes it feels like Daniel and Johnny have been pushed into the periphery of the narrative, but that being said, they certainly do have some awesome moments together, and the episode where Johnny reconnects with his high school buddies was particularly effective, although fuck me, I had to look them up to know that they were the original actors. Time has not been kind to these gentlemen. Either way, there's more than enough going on in season 2 to keep you engaged, despite a few wobbles, and I'm very much looking forward to the third season next year. All things considered, this is a show that's way better than it has any right to be. It would have been so easy for it to turn out as a cheap, lame, cringeworthy embarrassment, but that unique combination of brilliant writing, biting humour, honest performances, and good-natured nostalgia left me with something that's an absolute joy to watch. If, like me, you're kinda tired of shows weighed down by uninspired writing, or that are so desperate not to offend that they become completely stale and bland, then you'll probably get a kick out of Cobra Kai. A fucking awesome 1980s roundhouse kick. And that's all I have for today. Go away now.